First one on muscles. There's so many routes that I could take to get where I want to go. I just want to get us to where I want to get us, but we may go through like, yeah, we may go through Nevada to get to Shreveport, but that's all right. We'll understand. All right, you guys. We muscles are something that I think we take for granted because we use it every day, and it's something that we've been hearing since we were youth. Flex your muscles. You do this, right? But you're flexing your elbows, you're contracting your muscles. But you a little baby, or you a little kid, or they're your parent, they don't know, and that's okay. Like they shouldn't know. They just think that muscles flex, right? So since we were young, we hear things like muscles flex. And muscles can be responsible for flexing joints. Muscles influence motion. But what we cannot do is say these specific muscles only do these specific motions. That's a problem. I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to say. Somebody tossed me out a very common skeletal muscle. What's a famous skeletal muscle in the body? Bicep. All right. What does if I put up on the board and I say, okay, guys, biceps, don't make fun of my skeletons. Biceps, brachii. We have biceps femoris, we have biceps brachii. Let's do the one in the end, right? Everybody knows the biceps brachii. If I asked you, what does this muscle do? How would you answer that? Is that it definitely contracts, absolutely. Anything else? Flexes the elbow, okay? This muscle does a job and it flexes the elbow. In fact, if you go to Google or textbooks, they will have that, right? They'll say, you know, muscle strap, but it flexes the elbow. Well, what happens if I'm doing curls, right? I'm working my biceps, okay? And what if I bring the weight up, but then I lower the weight down? What motion is that when I lower the weight down? It's extension. Am I still working my bicep? Yes. So I wouldn't be working my bicep? Say that again? Absolutely. We're just saying like the biceps, like the superstar. We're just gonna. It's like Michael Jordan has other help on the Bulls, but we're just gonna talk about Jordan won 7 championships right now. Fair point. There are other muscles, and we're gonna get to that point as well. So the bicep can flex the elbow, but when I'm lowering it back down, that's extension, and I know I'm not working my tricep. True? So the bicep can do flexion, but the bicep can also do extension. I mean, when I lower it down, I still feel it, and it's doing extension. In addition, if I was doing overhead tricep stuff, I could have flexion, I could have elbow flexion, but it's not because of my bicep. You see where there's kind of a.
So I would argue that the bicep workout has flexion extension. Like the curls do, the bicep is fighting with grab and turn the extension.
When did I say it was?
But you're saying it does flexion.
Listen, all I'm saying, well, we could still fight. I love a good fight. What I'm saying is that traditionally, I asked, what does this muscle do? And someone in class said it flexes the elbow because that's what you've been taught and that's all that you've been taught. But there's nuanced context in here. And I gave you an example how the bicep can also be responsible for the extension. letting you down. Just because I didn't mention gravity and how mass warps space-time, it doesn't mean that I said any different. The point is that the biceps breakout can be contracting and be responsible for flexion, and it can be responsible for extension. Now, how can a muscle in a group that we're working when we're doing curls be responsible for two different motions because of two different contractions? That's the key. Muscles influence motion through the context of their contractions. And up until this point, all you guys have ever been introduced to is this muscle, this motion. Bicep flexes the elbow. And that gets imprinted in your skull as saying, anytime I see flexion, must be because of this muscle. Or if this muscle's working, I must see flexion. And I'm going to give you another example of why that's not always the case. What if I'm just holding this position? Am I not using my bicep to hold the dumbbells in my hand? But yet, I'm not moving. Through a different type of contraction, right? Isometric. I did not mean to insult gravity at all. We just haven't gotten to that part of the conversation. It's to show that this specific muscle can do this, or be working and not do any motion at all. In fact, 2 out of 3 outcomes, the bicep is not flexing my elbow. Think about that for a second. Through eccentric, I'm going to see extension, and through isometric, I'm not going to see anything. But yet, we say its job is to do this specific motion. Okay? Give me another muscle. Hamstring. Okay, the hamstring is a group. Within the hamstring group, you have the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, biceps femoris. Long-headed, the hip, both heads cross the knee posteriorly lateral, so they're knee flexors, and when your knee is bent, they're lateral rotators. The hamstrings. That's coming by. Look, I told you, you're going to go through Nevada to get to Shreveport. I got to establish that I know a little bit about this stuff to help my street cred when it comes to you listening to what I'm trying to tell you. One time when I first got back here, I sat in that corner when I took this class a long time ago with Dr. George. And when I moved back here, I joined the fitness club. Again, I'm not going to say the name of it. It rhymes with Fred's. And I had a student who was studying for a final. And as a joke, I went up to her. I was like, ma'am, I was doing an exercise. Could you tell me what muscles I'm working when I'm doing this exercise? And she was studying those and haha. And all of a sudden, this trainer came out like Batman. It was like a puff of smoke, and I swear he came on a zip line. He was like, oh, sir, I heard your question. And the answer is the forearm muscles. And I'm like, and she's just like, oh my God. And you know what I told him? I said, thank you. I appreciate that. Now I know that it's the forearm muscles. The point in that story is people can practice fitness, rehab, exercise as they should, but not have formal educations in this stuff. Heck, our Little League coaches were parents, and they're talking to us about motion and mechanics and this, and love them to death. If they didn't, nobody would. The side effect is that we have a lot of bad verbiage that's in our heads that my job is to try to make it make sense. Consistency of making sense. Okay, so hamstrings. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. We'll do them as a group. Would you like you know, a musical group like back in my day it was like Hanson or pour one out for my homie with One Direction. But like it's a group. I was honoring him. So there's a group, but there's individual members in the group, right? Right? So it's no, I have no problem with saying the hamstring. Eventually, though, we need to say, okay, that's the name of this team, that group, but we're going to need to know the individual members, players in the group. What do the hamstrings do? Traditionally, if you Googled it or looked in a book, what would the literature say that this group of muscles do? Flexion of the knee. Awesome. Hamstrings. Flexion of the knee. Now, our verbiage is usually like knee flexion, knee joint flexion, right? Does anybody have a problem with this? And again, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just it doesn't have the extra context that makes it more correct. Hamstrings. Flex the knees. What if you were, oh, so let's give some examples. Don't just say it, Cam. Do it. Also, you're going to learn that I totally dislike some of the verbiage we have to use for these exercises. All right, so here we go. Let's see, comme ça, right here. Save. You got file. Copy. Hack. Join. All right. So hamstrings. Now, to your point, you're right. There's 7 muscles that are working in this group. We just kind of talk about the superstars, which is understandable. But I'm going to teach you that even Michael Jordan had that. If the Bulls, and I just say Michael Jordan, I assume everybody knows Michael Jordan. If the Bulls win by 1 point and Michael Jordan had 45, but the 7th person off the bench scored 2 points, didn't that person contribute to the win? Just saying, right? So the hamstring scored a lot of points, but you have sartorius, you have gracilis, you have popliteus, you have gastrocnemius that crosses the back. There's other muscles in that team. So we're used to learning the superstars. But to the point, there's more help. So hamstrings, flexion of the knee. Hamstrings, here's the exercise, flexion of the knee. Got it. But what if you go back down? What if you go back down? Is that not knee extension? And would you still be working your hamstrings like during the negative phase? You still feel it. What if you were just holding this position isometrically, right? You're just holding this position. There's no flexion or extension. Does that mean these aren't working? You still rework it. Do you see the point I'm trying to tell you? That when we say this muscle does this specific motion, it trains our brain to become Pavlovian. The bell rings and we salivate. And I think we've had a lot of examples in our movement analysis where the bell rings and we give. Soup bowl, anybody? All right. So I've tried to present to you the problem of confusion that we cannot say hamstrings flex knee because they could extend, they could be responsible for preventing motion. We can't say bicep flexes elbow. They could be doing an extension, they could be responsible for no motion. We have to have a third variable in there to make it work, and that's contraction time. Context of contraction. We don't say muscles by themselves are responsible for any specific motion. What we have to say is the hamstrings can flex our knees when they're working through concentric contraction. And we're going to, I know you've learned what these are. I'm going to teach you what these are. And it's going to be a powerful tool for you guys. Powerful. It's not just memorizing them, we're going to apply them. The hamstrings also can be responsible for knee extension. They can extend the knee. but only when they're working through eccentric contraction. We have to put the context of the contraction. Think of it like this. Why is an elevator called an elevator? I want you to be obvious. Give me the obvious answer. Why is an elevator called an elevator? Huh? Because it brings you up, right? How are you going to come down? You're going to go down the same way? You're going to go. But isn't that funny? It goes down just as much as it comes up. And it doesn't move even more times. But an elevator can be called an elevator because there's only one cable on that thing, and that cable is pulling in a direction of up. Think about that for 1 second. I'm going to get to your point. Think about that. You don't have to have a cable on the elevator yanking it down. You got gravity to do that. So the cable that's pulling up can make you go up, can prevent you from falling down, and then the cable that's pulling up can let you go down nice and easy, slow and controlled, in the opposite direction of its pull. But the cable is always pulling up. What was the point?
It was, you did address it a little.
Okay. Maybe I can address it more.
And I'm not trying to, it's a challenge.
You're challenged. I've been doing this for 20 years. I love challenges.
But I think hamstrings is extending it.
Yes, it is responsible for extension when it's working eccentric. You know,
But in any situation where the hamstring would extend, even if you weren't using hamstring, you would still end up extending. That's.
we're talking about, you ever heard the game Clue? Remember that game Clue? It might be before y'all time. Y'all know, remember the game Clue? It was a game where you had to figure out who committed the murder, where they committed the murder, how they committed the murder. So like it was Professor Plum in the kitchen with the butcher knife, right? You had to figure these things out. Here's the evidence. And again, I'm going to teach you this. We're just starting. Like I said, we're going to get to report if we may go through, Europe. There's a lot of variables that I'm going to eventually tie on. There's clues here. There's clues. What kind of clues? Blues Clues, baby. Y'all don't remember Blues Clues?
Yeah.
Let's get those muscles out of there and let's do a tradition. Let's do there we go. And we'll go back to that too, but I think having the muscles there is kind of throwing us off of what I'm trying to say. So this machine, you got to look at the padding, guys. The padding is trying to extend her knees, right? True? The padding's trying to extend her knees. She's not curling it, but she is curling. But the point is, it's not a ladies issue where the padding's trying to flex it. The padding's trying to extend it. That's a clue. What is this machine trying to do to my knees? It's trying to extend me. So I need muscles, not that are also trying to extend me. I don't need quad muscles in this exercise. I need hamstrings and whoever their friends are. If the machine is trying to extend me, I need to use muscles that are trying to flex me. We're going to call those muscles flexors. Not in a sense that they're going to flex you, but they're pulling that way. Just like the elevator always pulls up, but influences motion up and down. So the clues, I know I'm working hamstrings because I can see this machine is trying to move my knee in the opposite direction of their pull. I'm using hamstrings in this exercise. Now, this is where our first two units come into place. If I observe extension, the only way flexion pullers like the hamstrings can do extension is through eccentric contraction. That's what a negative work is. That's what a negative is. When motion is in the opposite direction of your effort. When I see flexion pullers like the hamstrings are going to do flexion, but only through the context of concentric work. So the point is that it's going to be like a game of Clue. We have to have all the components there to make it make sense. These specific muscles are responsible for these specific motions when we have the context of those contractions. Specific muscles do specific motion through specific contractions. And you guys have not been introduced to the context of contraction. I know y'all been introduced to contractions, but not the context of how it makes everything fit. And the funny part is your body already knows all this stuff. Jackson, would you mind? Would you mind? I just know your shoulders weren't hurt last time we did examples. I'm going to do a couple manual muscle tests on you. Okay. You have any shoulder? You can on the shoulder. Okay. All right. Right here. Arms out. Okay. Check this out. Do not let me push you down. Don't let me push you down. You knew exactly which muscles to recruit because you knew what I was trying to do to you. Now, what are those muscles? We'll learn. Figure them out. We'll talk about the two heads of the bicep, the short head, the long head, the anterior deltoid, the upper fibers of the pectoral. We'll get into the groups, who's in the group. But the point is I was trying to extend your shoulders. So to prevent me from doing that, you needed strings. You needed muscles that pull in a direction of flexion. Okay, let's go one more time. Do not let me push your hands up. Don't let me push your hands up. Okay? I'm trying to flex you. You recruited muscles that are trying to extend you. True? Okay, one more time. One more time. Don't let me push, make your hands in the fist. Don't let me push your hands in. I'm trying to horizontally adduct you. You need muscles that are trying to horizontally abduct you. You know this. You all know this. You recruit muscles to do jobs. You make phone calls for the plumber, the electrician, the fireman, the policeman, because you need a job done. My job is to teach you to see who do we need to recruit, who are we going to refer to these muscles, and how we're going to coordinate muscles, motion, contraction. I want to follow up with that question to see if that would follow up, because I do love talking.
No, not really a follow-up. It's just, I guess, for me to think of it, I like to think of it as controlling the extension as opposed to calling the extension.
Controlling as opposed to causing. I like to look at it as allowing. That's what I like to say. But all three are phenomenal. It's responsible for, right? Like outside of if you put 1,000 pounds in my hand, it's gone. It's gone. I got nothing on. But if it's a sub max, it's not going down until I let it go down. I'm controlling it. I'm allowing it. I'm causing it. It's semantics, right? But the key thing is that the muscles that pull in a direction of flexion are going to be responsible for the extension, but only through eccentrics. That's the key. What we arm wrestle for semantics, causing, allowing, that's semantical stuff. And that's fine. We could argue that. But it's the concept that these muscles that are pulling in a direction of flexion can make the flexion happen only through concentrics, can prevent extension from happening through isometrics, or allow the extension to happen through eccentrics. I think that's the key thing that I'm hoping that we can agree on. Okay? So let's do one more. We got bicep, we got hamstring. What's another muscle or group of muscles that's common? Was that? Latissimus dorsi, my favorite muscle in the body. Not because I have one. The latissimus dorsi is, I was at a conference And this guy was asking about, he asked that question, he said, what do you think is the most important skeletal muscles for an exercise? And that was his answer. The coverage area, it crosses your pelvis, influences trunk movement, influences scapular motion, obviously crosses into the shoulder, does huge, huge surface. All right, so what does the lat do? Traditionally, I'm not judging. We're having fun. Well, let's ask the good old Google. All right, let's check it out. Let's see. What does the latissimus dorsi? Now, when you ask about what does it do, what's some words that we may hear in the literature? It's action, or it's function, or I like, where I went to school, we like function, because function is what does it do? Action, it's like one reason why, coming from Auburn, we didn't like the law of action reaction. Newton didn't call it that. We just kind of came up with it because action sounds like there is motion. You know, like you imagine a director and action. But we know that muscles can do work and there's no motion at all, right? But for giggles and giggles, let's do action. The latissimus dorsi, also known as the lats, is the largest muscle in the upper back and has many actions, including adduction, extension, and medial rotation. I sound like what? Oh my gosh. Really? That's who I was trying to mimic. Kermit the Frog here. So, what's the problem? Well, the latissimus dorsi can do those, be responsible for those specific motions when it's working concentrically, shortening while trying to shorten. And again, guys, we're gonna reestablish the contraction types and look at I'm trying to set the stage for why this is important.
Can you look at it like, I mean, if you have adduction, I mean, then you have to have abduction to go back home, right? So.
But I'm adducting. Am I using my lat? I turn with the thought experiment. And again, we're going to practice this. I turn off all my muscles. If I use my lat, I'd slam my hand up against my body. It is true. And that's the problem, is that our Pavlovian minds want to say adduction lat. And I'm trying to recondition your brain to say, maybe, but let's see what gravity is trying to do here. Gravity's already trying to adduct me. Why would I need the lat? I would have two teams on one end of a tug of war with no team on the other end, and we say, go, and then yank the rope over. Make sense? So we can't just say adduction lat. We can't just say extension lat. We have to look for the clues. What is the exercise? What is gravity? What are these external forces trying to do to me? Who do I need to call to recruit against it? If gravity's trying to do this, I need muscles that are doing this. I need abduction pullers, not adduction pullers. That's a great lesson because it gets to the point of what I'm trying to teach you guys. That we can't just say, this muscle does these motions. Why then do we have this problem? A couple reasons. One is anybody could get certified to be a personal trainer at any time. It's not an allied health field. It's not like if you want to become a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, there's like one governing body that says, hey, we need to be clear on the verbiage and the concepts. Anybody could get certified through thousands and thousands of different organizations. So what that does is it creates miscommunication. It's almost like, being from France and trying to have a communication with someone from Germany. language consistency. And it's a heck of a lot easier to give someone study materials and say, memorize this muscle, this motion, this muscle, this motion, because again, there's no context. So what I'm going to teach you, I'm going to plant the seed today. We cannot, because of the reasons I gave you, we cannot look at it traditionally. We cannot say the latissimus dorsi does adduction. But what we can say is biceps, hamstrings, what is the job of a fireman or firewoman? What do they do? We could be obvious, guys. I know take kittens out of trees, but what's their primary job? Put out fires. Do they put out every fire? No, but they try. They try. They're trying to put out the fire. And sometimes you put it out while trying to put it out. Sometimes you don't put it out while trying to put it out. Muscles, their function all the time, and on holidays and weekends, even when you die, is to pull in specific directions of motion. They always pull in a direction of motion, but they don't always cause that motion without the context of the contractions. The bicep is an elbow flexion puller, regardless of if you're working concentrically, eccentrically, isometrically, it's still pulling that way. It's an elbow flexion puller. We're going to shorten that to say elbow flexor. What it doesn't mean is it flexes the elbow. What it does mean is that it always pulls that way. The hamstrings are knee flexion pullers. They're knee flexors, not because they always flex the knee, but because they always pull that way. The elevator is an elevation puller, but it's not always going to make you go up, but it's always going to pull up. The function or purpose of a muscle is to pull in a specific direction of motion. Now, the positive is, the good news, we have as many teams. I love that point. The bicep's not by itself. We got the brachioradialis, we got the brachialis, we got some secondary functional muscles like the teres major, and we didn't even get into the hamstrings crossing the hip. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into biomechanics. No one skeletal muscle works on its own. Michael Jordan would not win a game if he had to play 1-on-5. Okay? And what about the heart? That's cardiac muscle. So we are going to list them in this class by their team names. Team. It's all about team in 310. In 415, we're going to go into the specific functions of specific muscles, and we're going to do some fun, cool things with it. But it's all about the team name. Now, luck for us, there's no random names for teams. Like, think about this. You have like the biceps brachii, the tibialis anterior, the quadratus, well, random names. That's like saying a fireman is named Jimmy, Tommy, Billy, Sarah. Just on their name, you don't know what they do for a living. But if I say fireman Billy, if I say fireman Sal, well, they must be a fireman. We have some muscles in the body that are like that. The adductor longus, the adductor brevis, the pronator teres. Yo, we got a muscle called the supinator. Love it. But what that doesn't mean is that the supinator muscle will always do supination, but it will always pull that way. It will always pull that way. And when it's working concentrically, you'll see supination. Like if I had a hammer. Y'all know who NC Hammer is? Stop, hammer time? No. If the hammer is trying to pronate me and I need supinators, just like we did with Jackson, the experiment. What's the external force trying to do? What's gravity trying to do? I need muscles that are pulling the other way. My supinator can be working, can be on, can be turned on, doing a job isometrically, preventing me from pronating. The supinator can be working concentrically, making me supinate, but the supinator can also work eccentrically, letting me pronate, or whatever verbiage you want to use. Allowing, letting, controlling, all of those are cool words to use. The point is that this muscle is doing a job, just like the fireman's doing a job. So because we have some muscles that have their function, their purpose, their pull in the name, that's awesome. I wish all the muscles did. We need to look at them all the same. How they pull. There are, write it down, or at 36 minutes, there are as many teams of muscles, there are as many groups, we're going to call them groups. There are as many groups of muscles in our body as we have allowable joint motions. And that should make a lot of sense. Our wrist can flex and extend. We have to have flexion pullers and extension pullers. Our wrist can ulna and radial deviate. We're going to have ulna deviation pullers and radial deviation pullers. Our radial ulnar joint can pronate and supinate. We're going to have pronation pullers and supination pullers. And the reason we have to have muscles to cover all these bases of direction of pull is because muscles only pull. Muscles only pull. This is going to haunt you in your sleep. Yeah, come on.
My muscle is eccentric, so it's relaxed and leaning back to its position.
Eccentric does not mean relaxing.
How does it pull in one direction?
Yeah, just like the elevator. Just like the elevator is still pulling up, letting you down. If you snip that cable, you'd fall down. If you had a baby, a newborn baby, you have 3 options. You got a few options. One is use your flexors and just keep the baby up. Use the flexors concentrically and get the baby higher. Probably what you're not going to do is let gravity do it. Probably what you're not going to do is let your tricep do it. You're going to still use your flexors, letting gravity win. Letting off just a little bit to let gravity be greater as you control the baby down. But you're still using your flexors to do that job. It's weird.
It's still pulling.
It's still pulling, absolutely. If muscles could pull and push, we would only need half the muscles in the body. Think about it. If the bicep could pull and push, why would we need the tricep? Bones can push. This is important. Bones can push because muscles are pulling on. But muscles themselves can only tug.
Okay, can you repeat the numbers of the muscles in the body as they are?
There are as many teams, there are as many groups as there are joint motions. So this is what I mean by that. I'll give you some examples. And first of all, I love the feedback. Y'all, I kid you not, I told Sarah this. This is my favorite class probably in about 12 years. I love you guys. Y'all talk. You have questions. You're not afraid to interact and engage. Or if I bring it. And look, I'm not always right, but I know where people have steered you wrong. And it's not your fault. That's what I'm passionate about. I'm not getting excited about you. I'm trying to be like, it's not your fault. So, what do we know the ankle can do? How can the ankle move? What are our 2 motions?
Okay.
Dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. So we have to have muscles that pull in the direction of dorsiflexion. And in biomechanics, I'm going to teach you that's the tibialis anterior, extensor hallucis longus, extensor digitorum longus, and peroneus tertius. But listen, wait. All we have to know now is that we have muscles that pull on your shoestring in a direction of dorsiflexion. That's all we have to know. That's all we have to know. And we have muscles that pull on the back in a direction of plantar flexion pullers. And you say your gastrocnemius, your soleus, your tibialis posterior, your flexor hallucis longus, your flexor digitorum longus, your peroneus brevis, or, wait, or you could just say my plantar flexors. You see what I'm saying? And traditionally, people just say bicep because it's a heck of a lot maybe easier than saying biceps, brachialis, brachioradialis, right? What do we know about the movie Coco? I told you I'm going through everything. What do we know about Coco? You die twice. You die, and then I'm paying homage to my man. And then you die, Liam. And then you die when they stop remembering your name. So here's my point, and it's a real point. If all we do is say bicep, 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 guess who's going to die on the wayside? The other members of the team. If all we do is say hamstring, 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 guess who's going to die a second death? All the other muscles on the team. In fact, ironically enough, your brachialis, which is a third-class pulley underneath the bicep, is doing more work than the bicep. He just gets covered up and you don't see him do the dirty work. So my point is that if we say plantar flexors, this is a group of muscles that pull in a direction of plantar flexion. It's a team. Who's on the team? We'll learn that eventually. But it's a team of muscles. So you don't have to say, duh, 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 duh. It's a team. And these muscles pull in a direction all the time, even at rest. I didn't say they're working all the time, but they're pulling all the time. Let me leave you with this last analogy. What's blood pressure? What, I'm sorry, what's normal blood pressure? Wow. Now that's arterial pressure, right? Okay. In the veins, it's a lot less, right? Like 10 millimeters of mercury, like this drip, like you poke yourself. All right. What's atmospheric pressure? It starts with a 7. 1 torr, but what's the millimeters of mercury? 760. Get you guys. All right. Now, what do we know about the law of mass action? Things go from higher gradients to lower, right? Higher pressures to lower. Well, if atmospheric pressure is 760 and blood pressure in the arteries is 120/80, and in our veins it's even less than that, why don't we implode every time we cut our finger? There's a point. Because this is a baseline, and this is on top of that. This is a baseline pressure. So 120/80 is on top of 760. In other words, your arterial pressure is actually 880 over 840. But because atmospheric pressure is a constant, they just subtract it out and we just talk about the difference. So what I'm saying is that muscles always pull. When you're watching TV, your muscles still have metabolism. They're still pulling, but we call it basal metabolic rate. That's rest. When we talk about contraction, it's work over rest. You can't sustain it all day. You're going to get tired. The fireman is still a fireman when he's watching NFL, but when he gets the call to do a job, working. You see the difference? Guys, I have a few weeks to get this home. Don't feel, I told you this was going to be a weird lecture, but I promise you, we're going to keep working at it. We're going to keep, and I'm going somewhere with this, but I have to plant the seeds that we cannot associate specific muscles with specific motions without the context of the contractions. That is the biggest take-home point today. And then I will teach you how to play the game of Clue, how to figure out the agonist who we're working because of why we need it, who we're making the call to work above rest. We've spent months on motion, so I hope you got that down. And then once you can figure out the agonist, you can identify the motion, contraction is going to be given to you. Contraction is going to be solved. You figured out the 4, you see the 2 equals what? You're going to know it's 6. Trust me. Great feedback. Keep it coming, you guys. We'll see you on Wednesday.